Life at 40 was exactly as I had meticulously planned it, a successful career as a department head, a comfortable home, and a shiny car in the driveway. Love and romance? Those were chapters one had skipped, focusing instead on my spreadsheets and meetings. Until one unassuming evening at my friend Lisa's party, where my well-ordered world took an unexpected turn. "Anna, you need to get out more," Lisa had insisted over the phone. "It'll be good for you." I had reluctantly agreed, not really expecting much from the evening. As I arrived at the party, the atmosphere was buzzing with laughter and chatter. I felt out of place, awkwardly holding a glass of wine, scanning the room for a familiar face. That's when I noticed him. He was in the middle of a lively group, but somehow seemed separate from them. There was an ease about him that caught my attention. He walked over to me, a confident yet friendly smile on his face. "Hi, I'm Tom," he said, offering his hand. "I don't think we've met before." "I'm Anna," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, reassuring. "First time at one of Lisa's infamous parties?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Is it that obvious?" I said, trying to match his light tone. "Just a lucky guess," Tom chuckled. "So, what brings you here tonight? Friend of the host?" "Yes, Lisa and I go way back. But parties aren't really my scene. I'm more the type to curl up with a good book at home," I admitted. A fellow book lover. What do you like to read?" Tom asked, leaning against the wall, completely engaged in our conversation. "Mysteries mostly. There's something about unraveling a puzzle that's relaxing after a day of work," I said, feeling a bit more at ease. "I get that. I'm more into biographies, though. Real-life stories have a certain appeal, don't you think?" Tom said. The conversation flowed effortlessly from there. We discussed everything from our favorite authors to our jobs. I learned he was a graphic designer, passionate about his work, and surprisingly, 5 years younger than me. His sense of humor was a breath of fresh air. As the night wore on, we somehow found ourselves tucked away in a quieter corner of the room, lost in conversation. It was uncanny how natural it felt to talk to him, as if we'd known each other for years rather than hours. When it was time to leave, Tom insisted on walking me to my car. "I hope I get to see you again, Anna," he said earnestly as we stood beside my car. "I think I'd like that," I found myself saying, surprised by my own willingness to step out of my comfort zone. "Good night, Tom." Driving home, my mind replayed our conversation, his laughter, the ease of the evening. It was unsettling yet exhilarating. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of something new, something unexpected. After that party, Tom and I started seeing each other more. It wasn't like anything I had experienced before. He was thoughtful in ways that caught me off guard. He'd surprise me with my favorite coffee at work or send me texts just to say he was thinking of me. One evening, he invited me over for dinner. I walked into his apartment to find he had cooked an entire meal. "I hope you're hungry," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "I'm impressed. I didn't know you could cook," I said, taking in the spread on the table. "There's a lot you don't know about me," he replied with a wink. "For instance, I make a mean lasagna." As we ate, he told me stories about his family, his dreams, his fears. It was intimate, real. After dinner, we settled on the couch, a comfortable silence enveloping us. "You know, Anna, I never thought I'd meet someone like you," Tom said, looking into my eyes. "Like me? How so?" I asked, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Someone who's not just about the surface stuff. You see the world differently. It's refreshing," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled, feeling a flutter in my stomach. Weeks turned into months, and our relationship deepened. Tom was charming, not just to me but to everyone around him. He even won over my parents when I introduced him. My mom, who was usually hard to please, said, "He's a keeper, that one." But the real turning point came 6 months into our relationship. It was a regular evening. We were walking in the park after dinner. Anna, I've been thinking, Tom started, sounding serious for once. I don't want to spend another day without you. Marry me. His proposal caught me off guard. Tom, are you serious? We've only been together for 6 months. I know it's fast. But when something feels right, why wait? He argued, his eyes searching mine for an answer. I looked at him, this man who had unexpectedly become my world. Yes, I found myself saying, yes, I'll marry you. Married life started like something out of a storybook. Tom and I were in our own little world, wrapped up in the bliss that comes with being newlyweds. In those first few months, Tom was incredibly attentive. He'd surprise me with little notes hidden around the house, each one making my day a little brighter. One evening, I found a note on the bathroom mirror. Meet me in the backyard, it read. Curious, I made my way outside to find Tom had set up a makeshift projector. Movie night under the stars, he announced proudly. I couldn't help but laugh. You really go all out, don't you? Only the best for my wife, he replied with a wink. As we cuddled under a blanket watching an old classic, I remember thinking I had never been this happy. But it wasn't just the grand gestures. It was the small things too. How he'd make coffee just the way I liked it, or how we'd cook together, dancing around the kitchen to some old tune. One day, as we were making dinner, I playfully splashed him with water. Hey, what was that for? He exclaimed, pretending to be offended. Just keeping you on your toes, I shot back, laughing. He came over, a mock stern look on his face. You're going to pay for that, he said, before breaking into a smile and pulling me into a hug. Life with Tom felt easy, like everything had fallen into place. Even when we disagreed, it was never anything serious. We had this rhythm, this understanding between us that felt natural. But as perfect as everything seemed, there were moments that gave me pause. Like when Tom casually suggested that we should have a joint bank account for convenience. I remember frowning slightly at the idea. Isn't it a bit soon for that? We're doing fine managing our finances separately. He shrugged, a carefree smile on his face. It's just easier this way, isn't it? One less thing to worry about. I hesitated but eventually agreed. After all, we were married now. Sharing a bank account seemed like a logical step in our partnership. The shift was subtle at first. After we merged our bank accounts, I noticed small discrepancies in our finances. Tom started spending more, often on things that seemed extravagant. One evening, I decided to bring it up. We were sitting in the living room, bills scattered on the coffee table. Tom, I've been noticing some large amounts coming out of our account lately. Fancy suits, high-end gadgets, it's a bit much, don't you think? Tom looked up from his phone, seemingly unfazed. Oh, that. Well, I need to look the part, don't I? You can't have your husband looking shabby. I frowned. But we need to be smart about our spending. We have a mortgage and other responsibilities. He waved his hand dismissively. Relax, Anna. We're doing fine. Don't be such a worrywart. That conversation left a sour taste in my mouth. Tom's attitude towards money was so different from mine. I was used to saving, planning for the future, while he seemed to live in the moment, unconcerned about tomorrow. As weeks passed, Tom's behavior started to change in other ways too. He seemed less interested in spending time with me, often opting to go out with his friends instead. Then came the day when Tom dropped another bombshell. He came home early from work, a buoyant smile on his face. Guess what? I've decided to go part-time at work. I'll be working only till noon, he announced cheerfully as he raided the fridge. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Part-time? Why? We haven't discussed this. He shrugged, grabbing a beer. I figured since you're doing so well with your job, I could take it easy. Plus, I want to focus on my hobbies, maybe hit the gym more. I felt a surge of frustration. Tom, we're a team. Decisions like this should be made together. He looked at me, his expression one of annoyance. Why are you making a big deal out of this? It's not like we can't afford it. The conversation escalated from there, ending with Tom storming out of the room. I sat there, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. It was around that time that I suggested maybe we should start thinking about having a child, hoping it would bring us closer. Tom's reaction, however, was far from what I expected. A child? Are you serious, Anna? I think you're a bit too old for that, he said bluntly, not even looking up from his phone. His words stung. I was taken aback by his insensitivity. Too old? That's a harsh thing to say, Tom. He shrugged. It's the truth. Besides, I'm not ready to be tied down with kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Tom I married. He used to be considerate, loving. Now, he was turning into someone I hardly recognized. As the days turned into weeks, the distance between us grew. The man I fell in love with was fading away, replaced by someone who seemed to care only about himself. I started to feel more like an ATM than a wife, a provider rather than a partner. The changes in Tom were becoming more pronounced, and it felt like our marriage was on a slippery slope. His part-time job meant he was home more, but not in the way I had hoped. He spent most of his time at the gym or hanging out with friends, leaving me to handle the household chores. One evening, I came home exhausted from work, only to find the house in a mess. Tom was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You're home early," I commented, dropping my bag. He didn't look up. "Yeah." Gym was crowded. Decided to skip it. I sighed, looking around. "Tom, since you're home more, do you think you could help out with some of these chores?" He frowned, his tone defensive. "What? Now you want me to be a house husband? That's not my thing, Anna." I felt my patience wearing thin. It's not about being a house husband. It's about helping each other out. He shrugged, unmoved. "I don't know, Anna. I have other things to do." I bit back a sharper retort, feeling a growing sense of frustration and loneliness. It was like talking to a wall. He just didn't get it, or he didn't care. I couldn't tell which was worse. The situation worsened when I suggested he could use his free time for something productive, like taking care of the house or cooking. "Me? Cook? Come on, Anna, you know I'm no good in the kitchen." He laughed it off. "But you could learn. It would be helpful," I pressed, hoping he'd see reason. He scoffed. "I have better things to do with my time." I felt a surge of anger. "Like what? Going to the gym and hanging out with your friends?" He rolled his eyes. "You just don't get it, do you? I need my space, Anna." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was not the partnership I had signed up for. I was working full-time, managing the house, and now, apparently, I was expected to be okay, with his complete lack of contribution. The final straw came when I found out about his demands at home. One evening, I came home late from a particularly grueling day at work. "Hey, what's for dinner?" Tom asked as soon as I walked in. I was taken aback. "I just got home. I thought maybe you'd have something ready since you were home all day." He laughed, as if I had made a joke. "Me? Cook? Come on, Anna. That's your thing." I stood there, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "My thing? What about teamwork, Tom? What about supporting each other?" He just shrugged, completely indifferent to my feelings. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than ever. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew, was becoming a stranger to me. Our conversations were now either superficial or arguments. The warmth and connection we once shared seemed like a distant memory. One afternoon, while doing a deep clean, I moved the bed to get to the dust underneath and spotted something glinting against the wall. Reaching down, my heart sank as I picked up an earring that certainly wasn't mine. The cold wave of realization hit me hard. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I turned the earring over in my fingers, a storm of questions and fears swirling in my mind. When Tom returned home later, I confronted him directly. "Tom, I found this earring under our bed. It's not mine. Can you explain?" He glanced at the earring with a nervous laugh. "Where did that come from?" "Maybe it's from one of your friends." I knew none of my friends owned anything like this. "No, Tom. My friends haven't been over in ages. And they don't wear this style." He gave a casual shrug, but I could tell he was uneasy. "I don't know, Anna. Maybe it's yours and you forgot about it." I felt frustration building inside me. "I know what my jewelry looks like, Tom. This isn't mine." There was a tense silence. Finally, Tom sighed and admitted, "Okay, it probably belongs to a friend of mine." "A friend?" My voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and hurt. "Yeah, she must have dropped it when she was here," he said, avoiding my gaze. The room seemed to spin as I processed his words. "When she was here? In our house? In our bedroom?" He gave a half-hearted defense. "It's not a big deal, Anna. It was just a visit." I was incensed. "Just a visit? You brought another woman into our home, our bedroom? That's a big deal, Tom." He tried to downplay it, but I could see right through his act. "You're overreacting, Anna. It was nothing." The conversation escalated from there, ending with Tom storming out and me left alone, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. That night, as I lay in bed, Tom's admission replayed in my mind. I realized that my marriage had hit a point of no return. I couldn't just brush this under the rug. I needed to know the extent of Tom's betrayal, to understand what I was dealing with. The next day, I picked up the phone and dialed an old friend. He was someone I had known for years, someone discreet and skilled in handling sensitive situations. "Hey, it's Anna. I need a favor, something personal. I need to know what's really going on when I'm not around. Can you help?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "Of course, Anna. I know just how to handle this. Let's meet and discuss the details." Then came the incident that broke the camel's back. My father had an accident and needed a wheelchair. I found a state-of-the-art model that would give him some independence, but it was expensive. I didn't hesitate, though. This was my dad, and he deserved the best. I was discussing it on the phone with my mom when Tom walked in. "What's that about a wheelchair?" he asked, a curious look on his face. I hung up and turned to him. "My dad had an accident. I'm buying him a modern wheelchair to help him get around." He raised his eyebrows. "Sounds expensive. How much?" I told him the amount, and his reaction was shocking. "Are you crazy? That's a lot of money, Anna." I was taken aback. "It's for my dad, Tom. He needs it." He scoffed. "Your dad's old, Anna. Why waste so much money on a wheelchair? You should be saving that for us, for our future." I felt a surge of anger. "It's my money, Tom. And it's for my dad. I'm not going to skimp on something he needs." Tom's face turned red. "Your money? What about our money? You know what you should be buying instead? That motorcycle I've been looking at. That's a better investment than some old man's wheelchair." I couldn't believe my ears. "A motorcycle? You think a motorcycle is more important than my injured father?" He shrugged. "Yeah, I do. I work hard. I deserve it." I shook my head in disbelief. "You barely work, Tom. And even if you did, my father's needs come before your wants." He got in my face, his voice raised. "You're being selfish, Anna. All you care about is your family. What about me? What about what I want?" I stood my ground. "This isn't about you, Tom. This is about my father needing help, and I'm going to give it to him, whether you like it or not." Tom laughed mockingly. "You know what, Anna? I married you for your money. You're just an old, ugly woman who I thought would be easy to control. But I see now you're just a fool. If you don't buy me that motorcycle, I'll divorce you. And good luck getting married again at your age. Let's see who'd want you after me." I felt a surge of anger mixed with determination. Reaching into the drawer of the coffee table, I pulled out a folder and slammed it onto the table. "These are pictures from a private detective, Tom. They show exactly what you've been up to when I'm not around," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. His smirk faltered as he flipped through the photos, his face turning pale. The images were undeniable proof of his infidelity, his betrayal laid bare for him to see. "And this," I continued, pulling out another set of documents, "is our divorce paperwork. I'm done, Tom. I'm done being disrespected, lied to, and used." He looked up from the photos, his earlier bravado gone. "Anna, please, we can talk about this. I didn't mean those things I said." But it was too late. I had seen the truth behind the man I married, and there was no going back. "I've made my decision, Tom. It's over," I said firmly. As he left the house that day, the folder and divorce papers in his hands, I felt a profound sense of relief mixed with sorrow. It was the end of a painful chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new, albeit uncertain, journey. The divorce proceedings were nothing short of a roller coaster. Tom, in a desperate attempt to salvage what he could, demanded alimony, citing the stark difference between our salaries. His audacity knew no bounds, and the trial turned into a battleground of accusations and legal maneuvers. I sat in the courtroom, my lawyer by my side, clutching the folder that held all the evidence of Tom's infidelity and betrayal. As his demands for alimony echoed through the room, I felt a mix of disbelief and determination. This was the man I had loved, and now he was trying to exploit me one last time. When it was my turn, I presented everything: the photographs from the private detective, bank statements showing his extravagant spending, and testimonies about his lifestyle. The evidence was overwhelming, painting a clear picture of a man who had taken advantage of my trust and love for his own gain. The judge listened intently, flipping through the evidence, his expression unreadable. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. The court ruled in my favor. Tom's claims for alimony were dismissed, and the divorce was granted on my terms. I remember exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding, a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was over. The legal ties that bound me to Tom were severed, and I was free. In the aftermath of the trial, life slowly started to return to a new kind of normal. I focused on rebuilding myself, reconnecting with the parts of me that had been lost in the shadows of my marriage. One day, as I was having coffee with a friend, she mentioned Tom. "Have you heard about your ex? He's in deep trouble. Debt's piling up, and I heard he's even hiding from some angry husbands." I sipped my coffee, feeling a sense of closure. Really? Can't say I'm surprised. He made his bed, now he has to lie in it. The conversation moved on, but a part of me felt a sense of vindication. Tom's actions had finally caught up with him. It was a harsh reality, but one he had brought upon himself. As I walked home that day, the sun setting in the distance, I felt lighter. The chapter of my life that was Tom was closed, a bittersweet ending to a story that had started with so much promise.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.